When we look back at the dawn of human civilization, one thing becomes clear: the gods have always been with us. From the earliest moments when humanity gathered around fire, told stories of creation, and gazed in wonder at the vast sky, we began crafting tales of beings far beyond our understanding. These gods, born from nature and our imaginations, reflected our deepest fears, hopes, and the mysteries of existence itself. But have you ever wondered why, in every corner of the world, humans have felt the need to create gods? What is it that drives us, across time and culture, to seek out something greater? I want you to hold on to that question, because as we dive deeper, it will lead us to some profound realizations about the nature of belief and human existence. Let's start with the beginning. One of the first recorded pantheons of gods emerged in Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. The ancient Sumerians believed in gods that were deeply intertwined with nature and the cosmos. Marduk, the god of creation, is said to have defeated the chaos dragon Tiamat to bring order to the universe. But what does this story really represent? Is it simply a tale of gods fighting? Or is it a deeper reflection of our human need to conquer chaos and establish meaning in our lives? You see, the gods are not just distant, all-powerful beings. They are reflections of ourselves. In ancient Egypt, gods like Re and Osiris did not simply rule the heavens. They provided a moral framework for how to live, how to die, and what comes after. The Egyptians believed in the journey of the soul, the weighing of the heart against a feather, and a complex afterlife where only those who lived righteously would find peace. Imagine living in a world where every action you took, every decision you made, was tied to the fate of your soul. What does that say about the role of gods in guiding not just individual lives, but entire civilizations? And then there's Greece. Zeus, Athena, Apollo, these gods were not just embodiments of natural forces, but also represented very human traits. Zeus, the king of the gods, was not infallible. He made mistakes, just like any human ruler. And Athena, the goddess of wisdom, often found herself navigating the complexities of justice and warfare. In many ways, the Greek gods were mirrors of humanity's greatest strengths and weaknesses. Their stories served as moral lessons, but also gave us a glimpse into our own potential for greatness and for failure. Now, think about this. Why do gods fail? Why, in so many myths, do gods experience doubt, make errors, or even fall from power? Could it be that these stories are trying to tell us something fundamental about the human condition? Perhaps the gods are not meant to be perfect because we too are not perfect. The gods, like us, struggle with the weight of existence, with the questions that have no clear answers. As we move forward in history, we encounter the rise of monotheism, the belief in a single, all-powerful God. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all share the idea of one God, transcendent and beyond human comprehension. But even in these traditions, the divine remains deeply connected to humanity. In Judaism, for example, the covenant between God and the people is a binding promise, a relationship built on trust, law, and divine guidance. In Christianity, God becomes human in the form of Jesus Christ, embodying both divinity and humanity in a single being. And in Islam, the concept of submission to Allah is about aligning oneself with a higher purpose, surrendering one's ego to the will of the divine. Monotheism, in many ways, is a shift in how we understand the divine. It is no longer about multiple gods ruling different aspects of life, but about a singular force that governs all. This transition from polytheism to monotheism raises profound questions. Why did humanity move from many gods to one? Was it a reflection of the need for unity in a growing, interconnected world? Or perhaps it represented a deeper yearning for simplicity, for a single truth that could explain the complexity of existence. Yet, even within monotheistic traditions, we see traces of the old gods. Henotheism, for example, is the belief in one God while acknowledging the existence of others. It suggests that even as we move toward the idea of a singular divine being, there remains room for the plurality of the divine experience. Could it be that the history of gods is not a linear progression from many to one, but rather an ever-evolving exploration of what it means to be human and divine? At this point, I want to ask you something deep. What do you believe the gods represent? Are they simply creations of the human mind, or do they point to something more, a reality beyond what we can see and understand? And if they do point to something more, what does that mean for how we live our lives today? The gods have shaped history, culture, and identity. They have been invoked in wars, in times of peace, in moments of great celebration and deep despair. But as we look back on the history of gods, we must also look forward. What role do the gods play in our modern world? Do they still hold the same power over us, or have they been replaced by other forms of belief, science, technology, reason? Think about this. Even in a world that seems increasingly secular, we are still drawn to stories of gods and divine beings. Superhero films, for example, are modern myths, tales of beings with extraordinary powers, facing moral dilemmas that reflect our own struggles. Could it be that, in the absence of traditional gods, we have created new ones, ones that speak to our current realities? The history of gods is not just a story of the past. It is a living, breathing narrative that continues to evolve, shaping our understanding of ourselves and the universe. And as we continue this journey through the history of gods, I want you to keep asking yourself, what do the gods mean to you? What role do they play in your life? Are they distant, ancient figures, or do they still walk among us, guiding, challenging, and inspiring us in ways we have yet to fully understand? The rise and fall of divine empires, how gods shape and are shaped by human history. As we journey deeper into the history of gods, we begin to see something remarkable. Gods, in many ways, are not static. They rise, they fall, they transform. And this transformation is often closely linked to the rise and fall of human civilizations. It's as if the gods and humanity are intertwined, their fates bound together across time. Let's think about the ancient Mesopotamian gods for a moment. Marduk, who brought order from chaos by defeating the dragon Tiamat, was not always the chief god. In the early days of Sumerian civilization, it was Enlil, the god of air, who held that title. But as Babylon rose to power, so did Marduk. The elevation of Marduk from a lesser deity to the king of gods mirrored the rise of Babylon itself. As Babylon expanded its influence, so too did Marduk's domain over the divine realm. This brings us to a deep realization: gods are not just products of the human imagination, they are reflections of human power, politics, and culture. When civilizations rise, their gods often become more powerful, more complex, and more revered. But when civilizations fall, the gods too can fade into obscurity. Why is this? Could it be that the gods, while divine, are also deeply human creations that reflect the needs, desires, and ambitions of those who worship them? Take ancient Egypt, for example. The Egyptian pantheon is vast, with gods like Ra, Osiris, and Isis playing central roles in the spiritual life of the people. Ra, the sun god, was seen as the source of all life, his daily journey across the sky symbolizing the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. Osiris, the god of the afterlife, represented the hope of eternal life after death, a promise that was deeply embedded in the Egyptian practice of mummification and the construction of monumental tombs like the pyramids. But what happens when the power structures that support these beliefs collapse? When the Roman Empire conquered Egypt, the gods of Rome, like Jupiter and Mars, began to replace the old Egyptian deities. The temples of Ra and Osiris fell into disrepair, and the worship of these gods slowly diminished. Yet, the essence of these gods did not disappear entirely. Instead, they transformed. Isis, for example, became a figure of worship in Roman religion, and her cult spread across the Mediterranean. This transformation leads us to a profound question: can gods truly die? Or do they simply evolve with the changing tides of human history? Is it possible that the gods we worship today are, in some way, the descendants of the gods of ancient times, reshaped and reimagined to fit the needs of modern believers? Let's fast forward to the Greek and Roman gods. Zeus, Hera, Apollo, and Athena were central to the religious life of the ancient Greeks. These gods were not distant and aloof. They were deeply involved in human affairs. They loved, they fought, they schemed, and they punished. The myths of the Greeks were filled with stories of gods interacting with humans, often in ways that revealed both the greatness and the flaws of the divine. But as the Roman Empire expanded, it absorbed much of Greek culture, including its gods. Jupiter became the Roman equivalent of Zeus, and the other gods of Olympus were adapted into the Roman pantheon. However, the Romans added their own twists to these deities, incorporating them into the fabric of Roman political and social life. The emperor, for example, was often seen as a divine figure, a living god on earth, chosen to rule by the will of the gods. This blending of divinity and power reveals something fundamental about the nature of gods. They are not just spiritual beings, they are also political symbols. When a ruler claims divine favor, they are not just asserting their right to rule, they are aligning themselves with the very forces of creation, legitimizing their power through the authority of the gods. But what happens when that power is challenged? What happens when empires fall? The fall of the Roman Empire did not just signal the end of Roman rule, it also marked the decline of the Roman gods. As Christianity spread across Europe, the old gods of Rome were replaced by the monotheistic God of Christianity. The temples of Jupiter and Mars were converted into churches, and the rituals of the old gods were abandoned. Yet, just like in Egypt, the old gods did not disappear entirely. Elements of Roman mythology can still be found in Christian traditions, from the halo of saints, which resembles the radiant crown of Apollo, to the use of incense in church rituals. This brings us to a critical insight: gods are not fixed entities. They evolve, they adapt, and they are reinterpreted by each generation. The gods of the past may no longer be worshipped in the same way, but their influence lingers, shaping the spiritual landscape of the present. But why do some gods endure while others fade away? What makes a god timeless, while another becomes a mere footnote in history? Is it the strength of the civilization that worships them? Or is there something intrinsic to the nature of the gods themselves that allows them to transcend time? Let's consider the rise of monotheism. The shift from polytheism to the worship of a single, all-powerful God was one of the most significant transformations in the history of religion. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all share the belief in one God, a being who is beyond time and space, who created the universe and everything in it. But this shift was not sudden. It was a gradual process, one that involved the reinterpretation of old gods and the merging of various traditions. In the case of Judaism, the God of Israel was once one among many gods worshipped in the ancient Near East. Over time, however, the Israelites came to believe that their God, Yahweh, was not just the greatest of the gods, but the only true God. This belief in one God was revolutionary. It represented a new way of thinking about the divine, not as a collection of beings with limited power, but as a singular force that governs all of existence. But even within monotheism, we can see traces of the old polytheistic traditions. The Christian concept of the Trinity, for example, echoes the idea of multiple deities while maintaining the belief in one God. So here's a question for you. Do you think the idea of one God truly replaces the need for many gods? Or does it simply condense the divine into a single, more abstract form? And if so, what does this say about our understanding of the divine? Are we as humans naturally inclined to believe in multiplicity? Or is the search for unity a deeper, more fundamental aspect of our spiritual nature? As we continue to explore the history of gods, it becomes clear that the divine is not static, it is dynamic, fluid, and ever-changing. The gods are not just reflections of human society, they are also catalysts for change, shaping the way we understand ourselves, our world, and our place within it. The eternal return, how the gods of yesterday still walk among us today. As we reach the final part of our journey through the history of gods, we arrive at a profound realization: the gods never truly disappear. They evolve, they transform, but they continue to walk among us, hidden in the symbols, stories, and rituals that define our modern world. To understand this, we must first reflect on a question: what if the gods are not bound by time in the way we are? What if they exist in cycles, returning again and again, taking on new forms, but always carrying with them the essence of the divine? This idea, sometimes referred to as the eternal return, suggests that nothing in the universe is ever truly lost. It is simply reborn in new ways, with new meanings. Consider, for instance, the way the gods of ancient Greece and Rome have been reinterpreted in modern culture. Zeus, the thunder-wielding king of the gods, might no longer be worshipped in temples, but his essence lives on in the superheroes of today. Characters like Superman and Thor carry with them the same archetypal power, the same moral dilemmas, and the same connection to forces greater than themselves. In many ways, they are the gods of our age, mythical figures who embody both the best and the worst of humanity. This blending of ancient and modern is not accidental. It reveals a deep truth about human nature. We are drawn to stories of the divine, because they help us make sense of our own existence. The gods, whether they are worshipped in temples or watched on movie screens, provide us with a framework for understanding the mysteries of life, death, and the universe. But here's the question we must ask ourselves: do we create gods because we need them, or do gods exist independently of our belief in them? Are they simply reflections of our desires and fears, or are they real entities that exist beyond the limits of human imagination? To answer this, let's take a step back and look at the gods from a different perspective through the lens of comparative mythology. Across cultures and civilizations, there are remarkable similarities in the stories we tell about the gods. Creation myths, flood narratives, tales of heroic journeys, they appear in almost every ancient tradition, from Mesopotamia to India, from Greece to the Americas. Why is this? Is it a coincidence, or does it point to something deeper, something universal that transcends individual cultures? Some scholars suggest that these shared myths reflect common human experiences. The creation of the world, for example, is a theme that every society must grapple with. How did we get here? What forces shaped the universe? The gods, in this sense, serve as answers to these existential questions. But perhaps there is more to it than that. Perhaps these myths are not just stories we tell to explain the world, but glimpses of a deeper reality and underlying truth about the nature of existence itself. Take the concept of the sky god, for example. In many Indo-European cultures, the chief deity is often associated with the sky: Zeus in Greece, Jupiter in Rome, Thor in Norse mythology, and Dios Peter in ancient Vedic traditions. These sky gods are not just rulers of the heavens, they represent order, authority, and the cosmic balance between chaos and creation. The similarities between these deities, across such vast geographical distances and cultural differences, suggest that there is something intrinsic about the idea of a sky god that resonates with the human experience. But why the sky? Why do we look upward when we think of the divine? Perhaps it is because the sky represents the infinite, the unknowable, the place where the human mind cannot easily venture. It is a constant reminder of our limitations and the vastness of the universe. And so we place our gods in the heavens, not because we cannot imagine them elsewhere, but because the sky itself is a symbol of the divine, a realm beyond our reach, yet always present, always watching. This brings us back to the idea of the eternal return. If the gods are not bound by time, if they exist in cycles, then perhaps they are not limited to any one form. They can be the sky gods of ancient Greece, the heroes of modern mythology, or even the abstract forces of the universe that science seeks to understand. The divine is not static, it is constantly changing, constantly being reinterpreted by each generation, but always carrying with it the same essential truths. So here's a deep question for you. What if the gods are not just beings or symbols, but processes, forces of creation and destruction that shape the universe and everything within it? And if that's the case, what role do we, as humans, play in this cosmic dance? Are we mere observers, or are we active participants in the creation of the divine? In many ways, this idea is not new. In Hinduism, the gods Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva represent the cyclical nature of existence: creation, preservation, and destruction. This triad is not just a reflection of the physical world, but of the spiritual process that governs all of reality. Everything that is created must one day be destroyed, only to be reborn again in a new form. This cycle continues endlessly, without beginning or end, and the gods are the forces that guide it. But even in traditions where the gods are seen as eternal and unchanging, there is a recognition of the fluidity of the divine. In Christianity, for example, the concept of the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit represents a dynamic understanding of God, one that encompasses both unity and multiplicity. The idea that God can be both one and three at the same time challenges our understanding of reality and forces us to think more deeply about the nature of existence. This fluidity, this ability of the divine to take on multiple forms, is perhaps the key to understanding why the gods have endured for so long. They are not confined to any one culture, religion, or era. They adapt, they transform, and in doing so, they continue to speak to us across the ages. As we bring this journey through the history of gods to a close, I want you to reflect on this: the gods are not just relics of the past. They are living, breathing forces that continue to shape our world today. They are the stories we tell, the symbols we create, and the values we uphold. They are the dreams and the fears that have driven humanity from the dawn of civilization to the present day. And perhaps most importantly, the gods are within us. We are the creators of the divine, and the divine is the creator of us. It is a relationship that is both reciprocal and eternal. The gods give us meaning, and we, in turn, give them life. So, the next time you look up at the stars, or hear the wind whispering through the trees, or feel the warmth of the sun on your face, remember this: the gods are still with us, guiding us, challenging us, and reminding us of the mysteries that lie at the heart of existence. And perhaps, in those quiet moments of reflection, you will come to understand that the history of gods is not just a story of the past. It is the story of who we are and who we are becoming.